Hi, my name is Steve Colino, and this is Confidential Remarks. What you're looking at is not a trend. It's a structural shift. Over the next 20 years, real estate will move along a predictable adoption curve, and the defining force behind that shift will be consumer trust. At year zero, the idea is barely visible, but as trust compounds, adoption accelerates, and eventually what feels optional today becomes the standard tomorrow. This is the curve we're operating on, whether we acknowledge it or not. Every major transformation follows the same pattern. It begins with a small group of innovators, expands through early adopters, and then accelerates when the majority is forced to respond. The mistake most people make is trying to convince everyone at once. That's not how change works. Adoption doesn't happen through persuasion. It happens when pressure builds in the middle of the market. And once that pressure hits, the shift becomes inevitable. This is the engine behind the shift. Demand drives adoption. As elite advisors adopt, consumers experience better outcomes. Those better outcomes increase trust. And as trust increases, consumers begin to expect verification. That expectation feeds back into demand, pulling more professionals into the system. This is a flywheel, not a campaign. And the critical point is this. Adoption is driven by demand, not recruiting. The strategy is not to chase the entire market. It's to concentrate on the highest quality segment, top producers, transparency-minded professionals, and markets where consumer pressure is already building. When you focus on quality, you create gravity. The rest of the market doesn't need to be convinced. It gets pulled in over time. But if you chase volume too early, you dilute the signal and stall the flywheel. In the first phase, we're dealing with innovators. This is roughly 2 to 3% of the market. These are high-performing independents, consumer-first operators, and tech-forward brokerages. They are not waiting for permission. Their motivation is differentiation and credibility. Their strategy is simple. Set strict standards and build public trust profiles. And their goal is not scale, it's credibility. At this stage, the market is just becoming aware. The question is simple. What is open access? This is where curiosity begins. Consumers start to recognize that there may be a better, more transparent way to evaluate who they trust in real estate. Nothing has shifted yet, but the seed has been planted, and that seed matters. Next comes the early adopters, roughly 10 to 15% of the market. These are growth-oriented teams, digital-first brokerages, and advisors operating in competitive environments. Their motivation is advantage, better conversion, better positioning. And here's the signal that matters. Consumers begin asking a new question. Are you open access verified? That question changes behavior. The goal in this phase is visibility and recognition. This is where the category itself changes. The old question was simple. How many homes did you sell? The metric was volume, but the new question is very different. How transparent and trustworthy is your process? The metric becomes trust. And when the question changes, the entire market shifts with it. Now we reach the tipping point, the early majority, about 35% of the market. These are established teams and mainstream brokerages. They are risk-aware and data-driven. At this stage, consumers are no longer curious. They expect answers. They ask, what is your trust score? Trust verification becomes standard. Platforms begin to highlight it. And the goal here is normalization. The late majority follows under pressure. Another 30% of the market. These are traditional operators, long-tenured professionals, and those resistant to change. But by this point, resistance is no longer viable. Clients expect verification. Recruiting pressure increases. And the reality is simple. If you're not verified, you're not competitive. Adoption here is defensive, not strategic. Finally, we have the holdouts, about 13% of the market. These are low transparency operators and conflict-dependent models. Their outcome is predictable, loss of market share, consumer distrust, and eventually exit. At this stage, the market no longer rewards the loudest agent. It rewards the most transparent one. Consumer behavior evolves in stages. First, awareness. What is open access? Then checking. Are you verified? Then expectation. It becomes required before signing. And finally, routine behavior. It's simply how decisions are made. And the underlying principle is clear. Before you sign, before you commit, before you trust, you verify. Over time, open access becomes the foundation beneath everything. Transactions, services, brokerages all sit on top of a consumer protection layer. By year 10, trust profiles influence selection. By year 15, verification is expected. And by year 20, open access is not a feature, it's infrastructure. This is the final point. Adoption is inevitable. Not because agents decide it should be, but because consumers demand it. This shift will not be driven from the inside out. It will be driven from the outside in. And the winners will be those who align early with where the market is going. Open access wins when verification becomes a habit. The only question is where you position yourself on the curve. This has been Confidential Remarks.